Today we're going on a journey into your mind. We talk a lot about how to deal with a pile of shame once it's already formed, but how can we prevent it from happening in the first place? How does this pile of plastic toys become a task so daunting that you would literally do anything else other than build or paint them? Well, it's all up here. So today I'm going to show you the first steps that you can take to ensure that you never have to deal with a pile of shame ever again. This is Cursed Crusader Arts. When I started this 1 hour a day idea, I literally thought it would be 1 hour every day, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Life is weird, life is full of storms, and life can be exhausting. Last week I had an extra shift at work, and I was tired just from that. But on top of it, the weather was awful. We got hit with a huge rainstorm. It was an hour to walk to work, an hour to walk home from work, and then my coat didn't keep me dry, and I lost not only one, but 2 umbrellas, both broken by the heavy winds. So when I come home, you can imagine what it was like. I sit down at my desk ready to do my hour hobby, and I just sort of left. I quit. I had enough. I didn't want it anymore. Because it looked like a daunting task. I didn't build that day. I didn't paint that day. I didn't record. And you know what? I didn't even make a plan for another day. But it's okay, it was just one day, right?
Right.
Wrong! You see, it's not just one day, because the next day came along and I was still tired. I still had to go to work. I still had to go through the bad weather. I still came home late and tired and wet and soggy and exhausted. And so I didn't do it. Day 3, I didn't even sit at the table. Day 4, I didn't even think about the table. And so this cycle that we had originally planned has been broken down and replaced by a new one. But why has that happened? Because you wanted to do the models. You spend all day at work thinking about the models, deciding what you're going to do with the models and how you're going to do it, and every single little detail. And you're excited, but then when you get to it, you don't want to. Do you see what's happening here? The cycle has been broken because the mind has given up on the project before it can even begin. First, remind yourself that your hobby time is a reward. It's not a job, and it's not a punishment. This is incredibly important. Second thing I want you to do is give yourself a short task, no more than 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, this is incredibly important. If you don't do this, nothing else that comes afterwards will work for you. So in my case, I began my hobby hour by finishing off the model from the previous session. I took the shield from the miniature that wasn't finished last time, and I began to remove the trim. This is something that we already know that we must do because we planned this out in advance for the entire army. We decided that the army was going to have a very utilitarian, minimalistic-ish look. This is something that we already know we must do because we planned it previously. Achieving this short 10-minute task is going to release dopamine into our brain, and this is often referred to as the reward chemical. The point of this is that we want our minds to relax and realise that we've achieved something, and that this is actually quite fun. We want our minds to relax a little and realise that we're here to achieve goals and to have fun. That's really important, that we're here to have fun. But it only really works if we break it down into manageable pieces. Dopamine not only affects the reward systems of our mind, but it also has a huge impact on our overall mood, memory, and impulse control. That means that we end up enjoying our hobby more, retain the skills that we learnt so that we can improve faster, and ensure that we remain focused on our current task instead of wandering astray to that shiny new cellophane wrapped box in the store. So the miniature from the previous episode is done. Now we're going to move on to a new one. This took about 10 minutes of my time, and now my mind is locked in and quite happy to build again. But the thing is, we're not really coming up with any cool ideas. And you know what? That's completely fine. We don't need to come up with new ideas right now. That's not the point. Part of building an army is consistency. Everyone needs to look part of the same coherent unit. So once you've gotten past that first sluggish 10 minutes, I want you to focus on building your pre-existing skills. I cut off the bodies of the next 2 miniatures and play about with them, investigating the details to consider my options. Now, like the genius I am, I get the parts mixed up and I try to push together the front and the back of 2 completely different miniatures, which doesn't work at all. So, if you do this, put the parts from one model into its own pile and the parts from another model into a separate one, just so that you don't get them mixed up like this. We enjoy kit bashing, but we also like our pieces to go together when they're supposed to. Next up, I remove this tentacle thing from the base. For Age of Sigmar, it's great to show the influence of chaos breaking through the mortal realm, but it doesn't really fit my Blackstone Legion theme. This has resulted in a new rule for my army. No mutations. This can be a chaos army for sure, but I envision this army as more of a roving warband of fallen knights, rather than a cultist worshipping dark gods for their twisted blessings and promises of power. If you find yourself removing elements and components of your miniatures in this manner, don't throw them away, try not to lose them. Put them in a bits box, label it as tentacles, mutations, whatever makes sense to you, but save them because they're going to become much more useful to you when you do another model. For example, maybe you want to build a unique chaos spawn, and now you have all of these tentacles and mutations from other kits, all ready at your disposal. From here, I clean up the cuts and then carry on scraping and filing away any mold lines. Now, today, as I said, I was quite tired and I'm a little heavy-handed and not as careful as I should be. So I often end up removing more material than I intend. So for you, I would recommend to be patient and careful. You don't want to accidentally remove any important details like rivets, bolts, or tips of fur cloaks. Be gentle with your files and keep your knife as flat as possible to the surface of the model. While you're reinforcing your skills, your body's releasing a second chemical. This is called norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is both a hormone and neurotransmitter that is important to your fight or flight response. When it's released as a neurotransmitter, it can help develop your attention, focus, and emotions. So as you get past that initial first task and move further into your hobby hour, you find yourself getting lost in the work as your focus grows stronger and you start paying more attention to the details of your work. This is going to help increase the satisfaction that you get from doing the hobby and encourage you to continue doing it. What happens is, as you go further into your hobby hour, you lose track of time and you get absorbed in the task at hand, and you find that you stop worrying and thinking about all of those other issues that you had before you started hobbying. The very same issues that were likely going to stop you from doing the hobby in the first place. Once the torso is clean and has been glued together, it's time to pick out the arms and head. First of all, I noticed the spiked knee pads. This is a nice little detail, so I'm going to lean into it as one of the miniature's defining features. I pick out a helmet that has similar spikes on it, and it also has some horns that look relatively elegant, and therefore I'm also going to give this a two-handed axe which has some of the smoother features on it. In addition, one of the vamp braces has spikes on it as well, which then means that the lower, middle and top parts of the miniature are now all tied together by this singular theme. With a little dry fitting to test the pose, I can then glue the offhand arm in place and leave the weapon separate for ease of access to the rest of the body for painting, which leaves me with this. By this point, I'm a little over halfway through my time and I have about 25 minutes left. My mind has quit resisting and we're in a kind of free flow state. The brain doesn't even realise that it's consciously stopped thinking about all of the problems and worries that we had at the beginning. And now that the dust has been blown off, we're beginning to form new ideas for our miniatures. This already happened earlier on when we talked about having no mutations at all, which is a significant change in the direction for our army. For instance, this next miniature has the soldier designed in such a way that one of his legs are separate from the rest of the torso. This is actually completely different to the ones that we've built before, and it does come with a potential risk. Remember earlier when we were talking about perfecting our skills with the knives and files? Well, this is exactly why. The sprue is directly connected to the nub that is used to connect the leg to the torso. This nub is an anchor point, in the same way as a wire is when we pin different parts together. So it's crucial that we do not cut this off. So, we just want to use the knife to remove the excess plastic from the sprue without cutting that anchoring nub away. Then dry fit the parts together. Always dry fit. Now that the cobwebs are all gone, our brain is now creating new ideas based off the information that we're getting from our miniatures as we work. It can help us come up with new ideas, big or small, and this is done by the third chemical that I want to talk about, acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a chemical compound predominantly connected to the purpose of making your muscles contract, but it also has an important role in your mind. It's crucial for both short and long-term memory and is also partly responsible for your mind's information storage. So just think of those aha moments. And that is the acetylcholine kicking in. My aha moment for today was when I was cleaning up the shield. I noticed the skull hanging off the side and it reminded me of one of the plan specifications I'd mentioned last week. I want this to be grimdark. Something gritty, cruel, and unforgiving, and it just doesn't hit right without some skulls hanging around. I'd never really given it much thought, and I'm about to run out of time for this session, but I decided here to ensure that we add plenty of skulls into this project. So many skulls that Khorne's going to be knocking on our door for skull taxes to add to his throne. This is also great for the Blackstone Legion from For Honor. Though the game itself is brutal enough, adding in these unforgiving grimdark tropes and themes is going to escalate our version from good and average to something that is quite eye-catching and spectacular. So I'm pretty excited to see where this goes. Today was a hard day. Poor weather, health and extra work had me stuck in the trenches and I just didn't want to do my hobby. But we took back control and used specific tactics to help our minds to stop being stuck in that survival mode and to see our hobby as a reward instead of a punishment. First, we gave ourselves a short 10-minute task to do at the beginning, something that didn't require a lot of brand new thought. The success here encourages us to continue, and we used our second miniature to hone our skills, kind of like sharpening a knife. And finally, during our last miniature, we came up with some new ideas for the overall look of our Slaves to Darkness project. 2 more Chaos Warriors have been added, which means we now have 7 out of the 10 miniatures done, which leaves 3 more before we can go on to the next stage. This has also increased our total work time for the project from 3 to 4 hours, and I'd love to get 3 final Chaos Warriors built in the next episode. But it's a pretty tall order, so I'll have to make a plan. If you're new here, check out this video to see how I planned out this entire project, but whatever you do, make things, have fun, and I'll see you next time on Cursed Crusader Arts.